Top 5 rhythm guitar essentials that too many of you ignore. I know you do because some of you are actually my students here. And how often, when we're playing rhythm guitar, do we just go to the obvious choice? The usual bar chords or the usual open chords. There are so many more things that we can do to make our rhythm guitar playing sound far more interesting and also just far more fun to play. It can sound something like this. Number 1, find a more interesting place to play the chord. Sure, we can play Cowboy A, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do love Cowboy A. Or we could play a bar chord. Sure, we could do that, but there's lots of other ways to play an A chord. We could take this really cool one. This combines notes from the bar chord, and it includes that open A string. There's something really cool about how that rings on the guitar. Or we could take another A up here like this. This is just thinking of a triad A up here, but still including that open A chord there. Let's take a D chord. That would also be in the key of A, right? That's a 4 chord. Yeah, we can play our Cowboy D. Yeah, we can play a D bar chord. That also works. But what if I took an interesting D chord here? That's kind of a triad there of D. But again, there's a tricky thing because a D chord includes an A note, so I could keep the A note, the open A string, there running on that chord. That's cool. I could do another one up here. That's a lot like this D bar chord here. But again, I'm leaving that open A string because A is in a D chord. Now, I do have to know that. Yeah, it's true. But for D, it's such a common chord. It's not hard to just remember, oh yeah, when I've got D, I could do D, or I could do D here, or I could do D here, and I could keep that A string ringing on all three. Each one sounds different. And I mean, what if I had a lot of D in a song? Sometimes songs have very simple chord progressions, and you might even have like 4 bars of D. What are you gonna do with that? Just stay on that D cowboy chord for 4 bars? That's a lot of D cowboy, right? Maybe we want to move it around. And that's where we have these options. We could play some bar chords. We could play these sneaky guys, right? And we can combine them with other chords in that song, which brings me to number 2. Find interesting ways to connect chords together. Too often, people just jump to the chord shape that they know the best, or the one that they use most often. But sometimes that means we got to make a big jump. Now, a big jump is okay when we want that sound. When we want that big movement, we can have a big jump up to something high up, and that sounds cool, but sometimes we want something a little more subtle. We want the harmony to change, but we don't want to hear a lot of movement, and that can sound very cool. To do that, we just see the triads underneath. We see how the chords connect in very common ways. 1 chords connect to 4 chords very easily because they're really close by harmonically, actually. If we look at this A cowboy chord here, and we just do the Keith Richards, I call it the Keith Richards because he does that move all the time. And look how nice and smooth that sounds, right? From 1 chord to the other. A to D. Now, officially, this would be called a D/F sharp. What does that mean? Remember that the slash just tells us what note to put at the lowest pitch. So this note here that my 3rd finger is on is an F sharp. So if I played just those 3 strings, or I could bar it, play the top 4 strings, then that would be a D/F sharp. But remember what we said, we could also just keep the low A string ringing as well on both chords. So we have the A with A on the bottom, of course. And then we have the D/F sharp, but it's not really /F sharp if we're gonna put the A on the bottom. It's really just a D/A then, I guess. I mean, all these names are not that important. The most important thing to know is that whenever you got this and you're going to a 4 chord, you go to this. And it's a beautiful, smooth transition. There's lots of others. Remember this A chord we did? Well, there's a D close by there. It's right here. And we hear just a slight lift rather than going all the way up with a big chord. See how different that sounds? There's no similarity between the two. When we keep a similarity between the two, it sounds cool. It sounds more sophisticated. Now, in this jam track that we're using this week, which, by the way, the jam track is also on Patreon, but in this jam track, the 3 chords are A, D, then G, and then it goes back to D again. But let's figure out where a clever way to find that G would be. We got the A, we got the D. Where's a nearby G? Maybe our obvious go-to one might be this G bar chord, or even this G cowboy chord, and those are fine. Those could be cool. That could be very AC/DC-like to go to that one. But there's also this guy here. We would go like this, we would go like this, we could play. It's more subtle, right? They're closer by. This would be a G/D. So we've got some similar notes, and that's what's making it sound more interesting, more subtle between each chord. Just because we found one clever place to make this connection doesn't mean we can't find more clever places. Number 3, don't play the chords the same way every time. We can move them up the fretboard. Keep it interesting. Let's go up to this A here, and we said there's a D triad here, right? And now we said that there's a G chord next. Well, where is the closest G? This is perfect because it's so easy to play. We gotta use a few brain cells to make it work so that we know where it is. But it's right there. It's the Keith Richards from D to G this time. Whoa, that's so weird. Now we're going from D to G. Here we went A to D. This is D to G. Well, it's there. How did I know that's a G? You could use this little trick. You could know that this note here is a G note. Now you gotta know the notes on the B string. And I know a lot of my students don't know instantly the notes on the B string. That's okay. You could also use this landmark. We talk about a lot about landmarks here on this channel. That's a G right there. Now, I'm not even playing that G note, but it doesn't matter. We can use landmarks to find things that we need, and the landmark might be something that we're not even playing. Doesn't matter. If we get the right answer, and if we get the answer quick, then we can use that. So I've got A, I got D, I got G, and I gotta go back to D again. So let's put the 2 groups together. We'll do the set here, and then we'll do the set here. Now we've got something pretty interesting. Sounding pretty interesting. We could go even higher. The same 3 chords exist in, well, many places, but easily in these 3 places. Let's do A up here instead. That's a great one. Again, it's higher up. It's just a triad shape here. But we can include that low A string in it like we did in the step 1 here. Now, what's the nearest D chord? It's this guy. We could think of a big D bar chord, but instead of using the big D bar chord, we're just going to use a piece of it. And remember that in a D there's an A note, so we can include that, open A again. So we got this A, we got this D. Where's our next G? Thinking it'd be right here. This is the straight line triad. You can think of it as coming from this G bar chord here, right? But instead of playing the whole G bar chord, which I could, that might be cool, I might just play that one instead. So we have A, D, and G, back to D, and we have A, and D, and G, and back to D, and now we have A, got lots of ways to play this now. Number 4, add different tones to some of the chords. That's a really good one. And so where do we get those tones from? We can just grab a note from whatever the pentatonic is nearest to us. So what I'm doing here is I've got this A chord. I could take this E here. That's just a 5th fret of the B string. And what pentatonic is that from? Could be A major pentatonic. It's actually an A minor pentatonic too, so it's kind of doesn't matter. It's there, right? Now it gives me a way to add a little melody to the chord. Rather than only hearing the chord, I can hear the extra tone added or removed, or both. Let's put it also on the D chord. We could put it on the G chord, sure. We can, because that note, we got it from the scale, so we know it's gonna work. We could calculate what this does to the chord. So for example, on the D chord, what I mean by that is like an E on a D chord would be a D sus2. Why is that? Because D, E, we're changing the third, we're making it a 2. Kinda. We actually still have a third in there. But you know what? The theory is less important when you're doing this kind of technique. You're visualizing a pentatonic scale that works for the song, and you're just finding a way to reach for it, add it to the chord, and remove it, right? A with the E. I mean, there's actually already an E and an A chord anyway, but the D with the E, the G with the E, that's pretty good. That's like a G6. Let's hear what that sounds like in context. Now we're gonna have a deep dive into all these concepts on our Patreon this week, so don't forget to try that out. It's 7 days for free. Plus we'll have the tabs and the jam tracks, so much. Number 5, don't just play chords. Add some riffs in between the chords to connect them, make them more interesting. Now we gotta know what the appropriate pentatonic scale shape is. In this case, we could use a little bit of A major pentatonic, and let's throw in a little blue note, why not? So A major pentatonic would be here, right? Pinky on A, that's my first finger pinky rule. And it would actually be easy shape from there, but with the blue note. So we can hit this cowboy A like we were starting, play a little blue note and walk up the major pentatonic, and then play that D chord. Now, that's sounding really cool. We could go to the G after that, just there, right? Let's do the next step up. Remember, we were trying to not play the chords in the same place each time through, so we could go up to A here. This is my D chord. So one of my options for a scale there is D major pentatonic, because if we recall from some of my other videos, that whenever we have a major chord, a major pentatonic fits over top of that chord. So we look down and we see, well, that's my D triad. And maybe we just ask ourselves, well, where's the nearest D on either the low E or the A string? I see that D right there. First finger pinky rule tells me, I put my pinky on it, and I've got easy shape again. Love easy shape. So I could create a little riff right out of these notes, because that D triad is right there. In fact, you start to get used to just going to these things automatically. Whenever you see this kind of chord, you just kind of know, oh, I've got this pentatonic shape. So it might be, and then remember we had the G chord right here. We could do the hammer on like Keith Richards, and back to the D. So let's review. What do we have? We have A, a little blue note lick to the D. The G is fine, already cool. Or maybe we add the little extra tone to it. And back to the D. And then we're gonna go up because we don't wanna do the same thing twice. So we're gonna go up to A, and And then we got D here, and we got D major pentatonic, G, Keith Richards it. We could even throw another riff in, if we have the time, right? What if we went one step higher? We did this guy up here, that was A. Here's a D. We could just play a little lick right there. That again is D major pentatonic, in this case extension shape. I find that when we want to throw in these riffs in rhythm guitar, we just keep little simple riffs. It's nothing flashy. It sounds flashy just by the mere fact that you're throwing it in between these chord changes. That's flashy enough. So all you need is a few notes and maybe your hammer on, and you're good to go. So A, D, G, you put that extra tone on there. I'll put this extra tone on the D too. Up to A here. Let's put a little D major pentatonic, and then to G, and then to A. That's pretty cool. Now remember, we have a little bit of D major pentatonic. Don't need much, nothing there, right? G is good. You know what? Let's put a little tone on G. That makes it G sus4. Yeah, also very Rolling Stones. I can't help it today. It's Rolling Stones day. And back to D. Now we have so many things. Let's hear how it sounds when we put it all together again. Remember that sometimes we should stop playing so much. As guitar players, we always want to fill all that space. And this other video here I have on rhythm guitar playing will address that, plus some other great tricks that you might want to hear. My name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons right here in Vancouver, and I hope to see you on Patreon.